So just off Knightsbridge here, we're about to plunge into a completely different world. A world incredibly rich with stories. The city of palaces, or a dreary row of cabbage patches. Both have been used to describe Belgravia, obviously at different periods of time. And it is an incredible story of the transformation of an area, a relatively recent development. Tom Pocock, in his book London Walks, or it might be one of the other sources, they talk about it as being an area that has no history, that it overcompensates for its lack of history through its grandiose developments, because until the 1820s, this was just marshy fields, susceptible to flooding in the spring tides of the Thames and the Westbourne, and we'll talk more about the history as we go along, in what is considered to be possibly one of the most exclusive areas of London. Now, not when it was a dreary row of cabbage patches where people fought duels and highwaymen hung out, but that's, yeah, we'll talk about that. Gangsters as well, as gangsters, all sorts. All sorts. And what's interesting is none of my reading mentions St Paul's Church here, which is, surely it's far too grand to be completely ignored. Wow, that is a really beautiful church in there. If you follow my footsteps, as I know some of you do, definitely worth a visit. So we'll go down Kinnerton Street. Yeah, this is a world that I think is the area that Tom Pocock describes as a land of Beatrix Potter style cottages. And it is incredibly peaceful. Belgravia is known for being the land of embassies, which is it's traditionally known as, but this is far from that. This is a much more serene, almost village-like atmosphere. There's the Wilton Arms, dating from 1826, so start of the development. Not one of the pubs that people mention, though. It's the life of Kinnerton Place South. Frederick Mews there. And there's a staircase in the corner at the end. Obviously, once these would have been stables, and then there'd have been garages for chauffeurs, and now people don't have chauffeurs and what have you. Well, I guess some people around here do. They're I guess residential. But the Nag's Head is one of the notable Belgravia pubs, and Adnam's pub by the looks of it. And on a suggested Belgravia pub crawl, Pocock mentions that it had a notable landlord in his time when he was writing about 1970 called Paddy Kennedy, an Irish fella. And close in the city of Westminster, and I like underneath it says, but not too close. That's great, isn't it? Look at this, isn't it delightful? It's so peaceful away from all the noise and buzz of Knightsbridge, and I imagine what we've got to come ahead. Carpenter's Close, and here you can see this one's a private mews, and it's got the Grover symbol up there. They're the original developers of the land. It's interesting, the name Belgravia started as a bit of a nickname because the area was developed by is it the Dukes of Grosvenor, the Earl of Grosvenor? They're the Dukes of Westminster, the Earls of Grosvenor, something like that. Dukes, Earls, Westminster, Grosvenor, same mob. So Belgravia was, I think, because it was a bit of a Johnny-come-lately, developed on brick fields by Grosvenor, working with the builder Thomas Cubitt, of Cubitt Town on the Isle of Dogs. And Cubitt discovered that the clayey earth down here that made it such a boggy morass when it flooded was also excellent for making bricks. So he created the brick fields. And underneath the clay, there was gravel, meaning you could raise the land and build on top of it, which is what they did to great effect. And I read somewhere else that the land came into the possessions of the Grosvenors as part of a marriage settlement, Ebury Farm. And then he purchased the 5 fields, which no one was particularly interested in because it was a bit dodgy at night time. We talked a bit about this when we did the Westbourne walk, didn't we? Because the Westbourne runs along the edge of Belgravia, and I guess it would have formed the boundary And at night time, it was quite a dangerous place. There were highwaymen there, just on the edge of Lowndes Square. There was a place called Bloody Bridge. A body was retrieved from the river there, the Westbourne, missing half its face and 5 fingers. It spooked people a bit, suffice to say. But in the fields, the 5 fields, during the day, it was quite pleasant. Tea gardens, places to drink, pubs, and what have you. But also, in the 18th century and early, duelling. That's where people used to come to duel. So you could tell when they went, well, Belgravia, it's probably like, oh, Belgravia, it's not Mayfair, it's not Bloomsbury, it's not even Soho or Covent Garden. It's Belgravia. And what's interesting, I've only just realised, the name Fitzrovia, you might think, oh, Belgravia, it's a bit like Fitzrovia. Well, Fitzrovia is attributed to a guy called Tom Dryburgh and other people, who was a Labour MP, a spy and a journalist. What a life. And he lived around the corner. So maybe that's where he got the idea from. The Alfred Tennyson here. I wonder if that's another stop on the Belgravia pub crawl. It looks a little bit, you know, swish, really. Now, I went into that little courtyard there behind Motcomb Street on my walk along the Westbourne. So I will refer you to that video for that bit. But we must have a look at Motcomb Street. Even though it features in the Westbourne video, I have to return to the Pantechnicon. I can't leave that out of a Belgravia video. An astonishing place that, you know, I got it wrong as well. You look at it and you think that's got to be maybe a theatre or maybe a cinema. But actually it was a bazaar where they sold art and carriages, they had antiques auctions, and consequently they used to do a lot of removals for people in the area. And the removals vans that they developed for moving artworks and valuables became the name for a removal van, apparently. A Pantechnicon, I'd never heard of that name before, I've got to be honest. And trying to hide behind these shrubs is a classic phone box. So this part down through here, down Lowndes Street, is in the Westbourne Walk. I won't repeat too much of that, but there is a location around here that I missed before that is the classic on this walk, I would say. So we're on Lowndes Square and we're looking for number 23, which I think actually is thankfully away from that really loud music on this square here. Oh, on this side here, it doesn't look right though. It's 23 Lowndes Square. It was used for some of the interior scenes in the classic 60s, 70s film Performance, starring Mick Jagger and James Fox. Shot in 1968, released in 1970, because they found it too shocking. And I guess one of the shocking elements of the film is that the sex scenes between Mick Jagger and Anita Pallenberg turned out that they weren't fake. And when Keith Richards heard about this, who was Anita Pallenberg's partner, he took to parking his car outside the location, outside number 23 Lowndes Square, and sitting in it whilst they were filming. The plot of Performance, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Bit surreal, bit trippy. But the plot is that a gangster played by James Fox, an East End gangster, is on the run from other gangsters. And he hides out in a flat in Notting Hill. The exteriors are in my Notting Hill video. And the flat belongs to a fading rock star called Turner, who lives there with 2 women. And then it all gets a bit surreal and odd. Bear that plot in mind. East End gangster hiding out, coming into this area and shacking up with a kind of flouncy bohemian rock star. There's quite a beautiful mews here, Halkin Mews. So I've come back out of Motcomb Street into Wilton Crescent. You can see some of the embassies down there that the area is most famous for. It really is embassy land. Another really lovely mews down there, another private one, Belgrave Mews North. And we are very close to Buckingham Palace here, right on the edge of Royal London. And a blue plaque for Earl Mountbatten of Burma, who was the last Viceroy of India. What was he? Was he the Queen's uncle? Lord Mountbatten? I'm not sure. They apparently implicated in the plot to overthrow Harold Wilson. That there was a plot to overthrow Harold Wilson and stage a coup is a matter of fact, I believe. There's articles on the BBC website about it. Must be true. The individuals involved, I guess, is a little bit more contested. If Lord Mountbatten or Earl Mountbatten had been confirmed as being part of it, wow, that would be a huge deal, wouldn't it? Because they were, we're talking a military coup. And oddly, another person connected to that group of people lived in this area, and we will go there later. A very famous member of the aristocracy who disappeared without a trace. Who do you think that is? Lived just down there. Is it a coincidence? It's the Singapore High Commission, of which, I mean, there are many, many High Commissions in this area. That's what it's kind of become known for. The charge that's levelled at Belgrave Square is it's kind of too large and impersonal, and now more or less abandoned for residential use as it's become the home of so many embassies, as you'll see by the flags fluttering all around its edge. But it still is an impressively huge space. Look at this place, number 5 is all boarded up and empty. There are a number of notable statues in Belgrave Square, including one to Simon Bolivar of Venezuela, which I will have to find that, otherwise people will be upset with me, won't they? As impressive as Belgrave Square is, it is kind of like a glorified traffic island now, isn't it, really? So there he is, the statue of Simon Bolivar, or did I say Simon Bolivar? I'm pretty ignorant about him, I've got to be honest, so we will rely on some on-screen information for that. Over in that direction, we have number 24 Belgrave Square, which was the home of one of the owners of the Harland and Wolff shipyard. And at his house in 1907, he had a dinner with an engineer, and that's where they planned the building of the Titanic. So now we'll go down Upper Belgrave Street, down another street of fine stucco fronted houses with their kind of Doric columns that led one writer to sort of say that Belgravia feels a little bit like a stage set. I'm going back round Belgrave Square because I want to go to a pub that a couple of people have told me about. It's got a great story, great story. This is interesting, number, I think it's 34 Belgrave Square. Field Marshal Viscount Gort, Commander-in-Chief at Dunkirk, lived here. Yeah. Belgrave Square in former times was known as a place for hanging out clothes. Then in the Second World War they used it as a place for storing tanks. Belgrave Mews West, with a very famous pub at the end. So the Star Tavern, looks like a fuller's pub, was notable in the 60s because not only did the local aristocracy drink here, such as Lord Lucan, the famous Lord Lucan, who disappeared without a trace after murdering his nanny in 1974, but also the East End gangster Billy Hill and Bruce Reynolds, one of the great train robberers, along with a thief whose name escapes me, but I will put it on the screen. And he apparently announced here that he was going to rob Sophia Loren while she was in London, in the pub, went out, found the hotel, robbed her hotel of 200 grams worth of jewellery and lingerie, and brought it back here to sell it, apparently, according to Ed Glinnett's London Compendium. Nice to get away from the traffic down here in Lowndes Place. And we're going to go down onto Eaton Square to tie together the threads of the Star Pub, the plot of performance, and the craze and Tory politicians. Lowndes Close here. Slightly different architectural style down the end there, isn't there? Eaton Place. Eaton Square. Still impressively big, but a lot more manageable than Belgrave Square. And I don't think there's any tanks or any washing lines, but there is an amazing story at number 1. Definitely flag of the day up there. That's amazing. Well done, Bolivia. The impressive St. Peter's Church. I suppose the interesting thing around here is you don't really need to know the age. You know it's going to have been built in the 19th century at some point, don't you? Which is interesting for London. Number 1, Eaton Square was home to Lord Robert Boothby, who used to throw some quite interesting parties in the 1960s. They were attended by our old friend Tom Dryburgh, Labour MP and spy and journalist, and also Ronnie Cray. And apparently there were, how should we say, compliant young rough men from the East End who were here as well. It does have a lot of the residences of performance in it. Gangsters up from the East End coming up to the posh part of town, mixing with a different side of life. It also makes me think of the film Sexy Beast as well. If you've seen that, there's a character that is a little bit like Robert Boothby as well. I think Eaton Square must be one of the richest territories for blue plaques. I can't include them all, but Vivian Lee lived along here, a bunch of others. I'm not sure either if we'll get to the address where Noel Coward lived. Over there, just a few doors down from Lord Boothby and his parties, you had the home of Lord Lucan, and it was here on one night in November 1974 that he murdered his nanny and then disappeared without a trace. Quite a famous story, and Lord Lucan became a byword for somebody who disappeared. As far as I'm aware, there's been no official confirmation of the finding of Lord Lucan. I don't know. And it was always assumed that his society friends helped him escape. You can see the milieu he is kind of mixing within. A wonderful fellow called Rainbow George, who some of you will be aware of, George from Hampstead, he used to ring into LBC for many years. Hello. I was fortunate enough to get to know George and sat down with him a few times to talk and interviewed him a couple of times. And one of the stories he told me was that he was one of the last people to see Lord Lucan. He used to play cards with him and a bunch of other society people at, what was the famous gambling club they used to frequent. And George reckons he played cards with him the night that he murdered his nanny. Interesting, isn't it? Another fella I knew in Australia, you always meet these people. I hear how this sounds, I know. A fella I knew in Australia, he was a really curious bloke. And he'd had, I'm not sure how much to divulge, but let's just say he had connections in Papua New Guinea, significant connections there. Had spent a chunk of his life in Papua New Guinea and knew people at quite a high level there. And he said, yeah, he remembered, I can't remember if he said he saw Lord Lucan, but he knew of Lord Lucan's movements that were in that part of the world, in Australia and Papua New Guinea. Obviously being helped to stay hidden, shall we say. Interesting. So we're going to turn into Chester Square. There's quite a few significant people that lived in Chester Square. Number 2 here we have Matthew Arnold, the poet and critic that lived here. We're also looking for the address of Mary Shelley. Apparently Mary Shelley also lived here at number 2, Chester Square, after the death of her husband Percy Shelley, obviously after she'd already written Frankenstein and created the whole modern horror genre. So now we turn into Ebury Street. I think Tom Pokart describes this as the axis of the qubit development. It says that every time some man must have had digs down here, including Ian Fleming and Mozart. I'm going to include the address of Dame Edith Evans in case that means something to somebody watching it. I've never heard of her, I'll be honest with you. And you can see it's a different atmosphere, a different vibe down here as we're moving sort of between Victoria, Pimlico and heading for Chelsea. So here is Elizabeth Street where Noel Coward lived. I can see another pub down there. You can see why they talk about Belgravia as a pub crawl place. And apparently it's the association with Noel Coward at the height of his fame that gave Belgravia its reputation for a sense of gaiety. So just having a little bit of a conversation with myself about where this walk ends. And it's interesting because I'm not entirely sure. We're going to have to work it out between us. But the Mozart statue and plaque I've included in a few videos, definitely a few. 2 off the top of my head. However, I'm going to include it because it's what's opposite. Tom Pocock describes what Mozart would have seen over the road from where he lived. So because I'm going to go there, they invented something very special there, very special, very important, was invented opposite where Mozart stayed in London. So we'll include the Mozart plaque for the 4th time maybe in a video at least. I mean, you can look at the Circle Line walk I did last year. It's in there, this is in there. Circle Line's running through here, but something else that's too big to leave out. So number 180 Ebury Street is where Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart stayed as a child and composed his first symphony here in 1764. You probably already knew that, didn't you? What you might not have known is that what you used to see over the road over there were people queuing outside Mr. Hans's bun shop, where they were queuing for his famous Chelsea buns. Yep, the Chelsea bun was invented somewhere over there. Couldn't leave that out. It's funny because I've never thought of Orange Square here as being Belgravia. I've always thought of it as being Pimlico. But there you go, you live and learn. And just getting this shot here to make that slightly sardonic point, is that sardonic? I've just seen an important place we've got to include. So maybe Mr. Hans's bun shop wasn't opposite where Mozart was staying, it was around the corner. Unless the queues went from here all the way back to Ebury Street, because this is called Bun House Place. So this must be where the bun house was, where they invented the Chelsea bun. Isn't that great? People will legitimately argue that Sloane Street should be included in this video, just over there. But like I say, it's in a few. I've done at least, there's 2 off the top of my head, including the Circle Line walk I did last year. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. That, I think, is the western boundary of Belgravia. But sometimes you know when the walk is finished, the video is finished. I always walk on a little bit afterwards, you know, just to digest the day. If I go to Sloane Square Tube, I would include a shot of it at the end. But for me, that's my Belgravia walking tour. The comments will have some amazing suggestions of other places in Belgravia that I haven't included. There will be loads. It's just a little selection that took my fancy. So, I'm moving away from someone playing music. But actually, as I was trying to do that final piece to camera, this little pub here, the Fox and Hounds, caught my eye on the corner of what I think is Mentmore Street and Graham Terrace. It's actually past Moore Street. So the Fox and Hounds would definitely be on that Belgravia pub crawl, wouldn't it? So, thank you so much for joining me on that amble, that meander, that wander around Belgravia. Wow, what a zone of stories, of incredible associations. My favourite is the image of Keith Richards sitting in his car outside the filming location for performance. Not that, I mean, obviously he was in a degree of emotional pain, but I think if you read the whole Anita Pallenberg, Keith Richards story, it's interesting. It's not part of this video though, but yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much to my supporters on Patreon, the members, the YouTube members, yourselves. It's one of those areas where people really look at when you're filming yourself. Vlogging hasn't hit Belgravia. Oh, what's this? Let's go down Graham Terrace. the YouTube members yourselves coming here every week and watching these videos. Massively appreciate it. So, as I always like to say, I look forward to seeing you on the next walk, wherever that may be. But unless someone counsels on me, I know where it's going to be, and it'll be me and another special guest who has been in other videos, actually knows what they're talking about, unlike me. Take care, have a great week.
It's over the meadow, over the stream, it's where I am going and where I have been. It's been a long day now, it's time for a beer, and now for home, of course I must steer. It's